Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next session for tonight and our next session of Warrior Goddess Summer Camp. So happy to see everyone with us. And we're just going to give a minute for a few people to join, start seeing the numbers grow. And yeah, really happy to have everyone. I'm really excited to share and introduce to you tonight one of the fabulous, most wonderful members of our Warrior Goddess leadership team, and that is Miss Adelee, and AKA Spark. Spark with an exclamation point, which is super important. So Spark, exclamation point. So I'm really excited. And Adelee is going to be sharing with us tonight about dessert first parenting. And I'm really excited to see what she has to share with us. So we'll be going live with her in just a minute. Well, she's already live. She's right there. Y'all can see her. Hi, Adelee. And she'll begin in just a minute. One other thing I just wanted to carry over from the last session that we had with Heather Ash is that in the end, Heather Ash had us all do this secret initiation. And we weren't sure perhaps if, what's the word I was going to say? They're called Toltec kisses. So if you're looking like, what was that? What did y'all just do? That's the super secret Toltec kisses. So, okay. And we have some folks joining us now. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and bring Adelee on. I'm going to make myself disappear so that you can see how fantastic she is. And yeah, Adelee, please take it away.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you for being here. Hi, everyone. I am Adelee. I'll tell you a little bit about me, and then I'll get started with Dessert First Parenting. So as you saw in my introduction, I am in the Texas area. I live in Kingwood, Texas, which is a greater suburb of the Houston area. And about the time that I started working with Heather Ash, I was also going through a divorce. So I've now been divorced just over 10 years, and my daughters were 8 and 5 at the time that I got divorced. And so being a baby Toltec at the time, I felt like I was learning these practices and then also trying to instill them in them as I was doing them. And so as a result, a lot of my parenting was very different. And last summer or last fallish or September, we were at the Warrior Heart Ranch, and just a lot of things began to surface for me. And one was the idea of this book, Dessert First Parenting. And so I actually started writing it there at Warrior Heart Ranch. And, I was taking some time away, of course, disconnecting, being off the grid. And I was thinking about all the times that the Toltec practices would bubble up and surface in my parenting, but also within myself. As I was doing the work, what I found was I was growing in the work and then also modeling it for my daughters. And so that was really an important part of my whole transformation into becoming a warrior goddess and continuing the journey of being a warrior goddess. Because as we've all learned, it is a journey. It's something that we, continue to clean, continue to dream, continue. It's a cycle that we keep working into. And it's a beautiful work. And I love that I've been able to raise my daughters with it. So they've both been to Warrior Goddess retreats. And, as part of their whole rites of passage, I'll talk more about rites of passage in a little bit. So it's been a really great experience. I do want to read to you just an excerpt of the book because I think it models the story really well. So forgive me if I'm not looking at the camera, but I'm going to read an excerpt of the book and then we'll go from there. The Toltec teachings not only forced me to look at myself, my actions, and how I was living my life, but I was challenged to look at every aspect of my life, including parenting. The beauty of it was that I would and still do this in a fun and unique way that piques my interest and often the interest of others. I run what I call experiments, a practice that I learned in my Toltec path. The title of this book is a result of an experiment that I did with my youngest daughter. My youngest daughter loved the beauty of always coloring in the lines, and she was an avid rule follower. Things were black and white, and that worked for her. Ellie was so sweet, but she appreciated structure and always wanted to do her best. This type of child seems like she would be an answered prayer to any parent or teacher, yet she took it to an extreme. In many ways, she had become the self-designated hall monitor. She was always watching other kids to ensure that they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. When they didn't, she took great strides to make sure she reported every detail of the infraction to the parents or teachers in authority, and she would demand that they force that individual to get it right and face a consequence for being out of line. This rigidness that she was displaying was something that she had gained honestly from both of her parents, and it was something I was examining within myself with my Toltec practices. Although Ellie was often the teacher's pet, her rigid way of thinking was often a struggle. When Ellie was in the 3rd grade, one of her teachers brought up some situations that had come up, and she asked me if I would talk to Ellie and remind her that she was not the one in charge, and sometimes she has to let things go. She suggested that I should tell her to leave the disciplinary actions to the adults. I found myself telling her this when she would give me advice on how to discipline her free-spirited older sister, but now it was something I had to get creative with. It was time for a new experiment. The next day, after the parent-teacher conference, I picked the girls up, and they were excited because we were going out to dinner that day. Ellie asked if she could get dessert with dinner, and I immediately knew what the experiment would be. As I imagined it in my head, I neglected to respond to her, and she woke me out of my vision and asked, "Mom, can I have dessert with dinner?" And I responded with, "Oh, yes, sure you can." As we arrived at the restaurant and prepared to enter the establishment, I stopped Ellie and said, "Ellie, you can have dessert, but only if we have dessert first." Her older sister squealed with delight, and Ellie's jaw dropped. She objected and yelled, "We can't do that." She was clearly uncomfortable, and I repeated to her that we couldn't dine out that evening if we didn't have dessert first. She continued to tell me that we should not do this because it was wrong, and if she were to do that at school, she would get in trouble. I then told her that I was the mom and I was in charge, and assured her she would not get into trouble. We sat in the car for a few minutes, and she thought about what we were going to do. Emmy, her older sister, of course, wanted to know what we were waiting for, and anxiously got out of the car and headed to the restaurant. Ellie hesitantly followed, and we had dessert first that evening. Since then, there have been many times that one of them might suggest that we have dessert first, and we do so on occasion. What Ellie didn't realize was that I was teaching her that there are many ways to skin a cat, so to speak, and this was the beginning of her being able to see things from a different perspective. Though she still takes issue when some kids are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, she's better able to manage her own opinions and go on about her way. So in this story, I like to tell that because that's exactly where the title came from. Is I encouraged her to eat dessert first, and I knew it was going to take her out of the structure of everything she knew and was comfortable with. And it reminded me of the not doings that we're taught in the Toltec practice. We're taught to not do certain things. So you might take a pile of rocks and stack it over in another place of the yard, and then take that pile of rocks back, or dig a hole for no reason and refill it. And what this does is it kind of shifts how you're able to think and see in your perspective of things. And I utilize that with Ellie to help her kind of snap her out of that whole, I'm the hall monitor. I'm following all the rules, and everyone around me will too. Not taking things personally, as we all know, is one of the 4 agreements. And so teaching Ellie to do this, it was just a fun experiment to run. But then also addressing what the teacher had suggested. I was at a place where I didn't want to break her poor little soul. She was such a sweet girl, but that was definitely one of her flaws. And bringing it to her attention was not an easy thing for me to do. So I use that scenario to say, Ellie, sometimes you might see kids at school that eat their dessert first, and it's okay. It's not up to you to have to tell on everybody and make sure everybody's doing the right thing. You have to focus within and then control the controllables. This is one of those lessons that I teach a lot. What are the controllables? Well, we're learning, especially during these times, that the controllables are just ourself. The only thing I can control is me. I think about you know, they've given me so many opportunities. There was one morning that we were dropping the older sister off at school, and she got irritated with her younger sister and started to yell at her and go on and on about all these things. And she said to her, "You know what? You are not my circus, and you are not my monkey." And I was like, wow. So she said, "I am not going to go there with you." And I thought, that's pretty powerful to be able to do that as a young child. And how many of us as adults will say, "Oh, they press my buttons, but who owns the buttons?" And so, stopping and really understanding what we control, who we control, and only taking issue with ourselves to control ourselves, because that's the only thing we really have control over. So they've helped me reinforce that lesson within myself, and that's been a powerful tool. Another thing I found, that as I've raised them with some, just distinct ways of looking at things, I find that they often self-tell. So they know they've done something wrong, and they'll come and they'll self-tell. And they'll warn me first, "Mom, I have something to tell you." Okay. And I can remember one time Ellie came to me and she said, "Mom, I have something to tell you." And I said, "Okay." She said, I think it was wrong. This was before the third grade incident. And I just want to tell you what I've done." And I said, "Okay." She says, "I was really angry at school today." I said, "Let's talk about it." She said, "I was so angry, I decided to break a pencil." And I thought, okay, that's okay. And she said, "Will I be in trouble?" And I said, "I want you to think about breaking that pencil and what consequences there were, because I've always taught them that every action has a consequence and it's all about choice." And I was learning that at the same time. And she said, "No, I didn't hurt anybody. I broke the pencil so that I didn't hurt anybody." And I said, "That's absolutely okay." So she self-told on herself, and at the same time she was learning how to make decisions that were not harmful to anybody else or to herself. And so that's been an important part of my journey as a warrior goddess. Yeah. And so um, we had a conversation recently, and I said, how do I parent differently from, other parents that you see? She's like, "Mom, you let us make mistakes. You let us choose, you give us the freedom to make our decisions, choose what we want to believe. And you don't necessarily influence it. You might redirect us if something's not on the right path, but you allow us to explore and realize what's really true for ourselves." And one of the big things that I appreciate is that they now can voice their opinion, be very confident in their opinions. And that's not easy to do, even as a grown woman. And for example, Ellie, she's now 15. When this pandemic started, she was seeing a lot of social injustice issues and things that she's always stood up for. And so she had long hair. She decided to give herself a buzz in the name of gender equality. And the responses she got from her friends here, being in a predominantly white suburban area, a lot of the boys in her class were telling her, "You look like a boy. Why would you do that?" And she says, "This is exactly why I would do that, because it's about gender equality. So what if I look like a boy?" And I think a lot of eyes were opened in that process, because they were able to see her point, that it is about gender equality, and there's so many social issues that are injustices, and she really wants to speak out for those. So that to me is a beautiful thing, and doing this work really helps you step into that authenticity and learn about those issues that really move you, and how you can move your energy into making it better, or moving into your flow of what brings you spark. That's why I chose Spark as my camp name this week, or for this weekend. Another thing I've noticed, speaking of freedom to decide outcomes, a story from when my older daughter was in 7th grade. We have what's called UIL here. So if you're going to participate in extracurricular activities, you have to pass. So it's the pass, no play, no pass, no play rule. And so for those of you who know me, you know, she is avid singer. She loves to sing. So she lived for choir and pop shows and all of those things. And also at the time she was doing theater, and because they were musicals. And so she had been benched because she had made a 69 in a class. And at the time, I've never really written them on their grades. I don't believe every student is a straight A student. I don't believe that everyone should be super academic, but I did expect C's or higher from them. And so at the time she had a cell phone, and if her grades ever fell below a C, I would take her cell phone. So at this point, she had decided, okay, I failed this class. I need to get serious, set some real goals. And her knowing her mom's a coach, she asked me to help her. And so I did. And so she decided she was going to write down her goals on a dry erase board. And my intuition kicked in and I said, are you sure you want to do it on the dry erase board? How about you put them in your planner, you know, where you can look at your goals and kind of determine how you're going to get there and have that with you all the time. No, I'm going to do it on this dry erase board. And I said, okay. And so we sat down, she designed her goals. So she wanted to get a 70. And so she could perform in the musical. And I said, are you sure you just want a 70? Because, you know, maybe a higher grade will be better because you get other privileges back. No, all I need is a 70. And so she set out to make a 70 and she wrote out beautiful goals. It was a beautiful map of her goals and on this dry erase board. So she went to bed confident that she could, you know, we'd done what are called the SMART goals. She done her goals confident that she could meet them, so and went to bed. The next morning, her little sister came down to do her math homework. And instead of using scratch paper, we always used a small dry erase board. And so she erased the goals so that she could do her math homework. So a few minutes later, Emmy comes downstairs to, you know, be happy about her goal board, only to find that her sister was doing math homework where her goals once were. And so it created a lot of tension, but at the same time, she looked at me and said, well, I probably should have put them in my planner. And yes, indeed, I think that was the right thing. You probably should have put them in your planner. But she was learning without me having to use an iron fist with her. Then she did get the 70 and she did get to perform in the musical, but then she expected her phone back at the time. And I said, no, the rule is that you make a C or higher in order to have phone privileges. And she said, well, the school says that a D is passing. And I said, it's not to me. And they don't pay your phone bills. So I did suggest that you set your sights higher. And you decided not to. And she said, yeah. And we talked about it today as I prepared for this session. I asked her if she remembered that. And she said, yeah, I remember that. And I remember that being a pivotal point for me to ask myself, is there a way to set my sights higher? And in some regards, that could be detrimental too, because as Toltecs, we always know that doing our best will vary depending on the day. And so I've had to remind her some days when she's not at her best or vocally or whatever the case may be, maybe she's got allergies or a cold and her voice isn't where she wants it to be, that she has to be gentle with herself and honor her personal best for that day. And so really going through, it's starting to rain here too. I know some of you online were saying it was raining. And I didn't expect it to. It's funny because the sunset is over there and the rain's behind me. So as I've grown in my Toltec practice, I have been able to teach them as well. And I imagine it's probably a big gift to them because they'll be able to better exercise their practices as they grow, and it won't take as much effort as it did for me and still does some days. So I really appreciate being able to do that for them. So yeah, definitely freedom to decide, freedom to choose, freedom to make mistakes and know that you just make another choice. And that's the beauty of it. So I really appreciate being able to offer that to them. Rites of passages. This is something that I hold very valuable for myself. And I have, around the time that I was getting my divorce, it was really important for me to honor the different rites of passage. So after I got my divorce, one of my first things to do was I traveled to Europe. And I went to London and Paris. And that to me marked a rite of passage um, into my new life as a single mom. And then also as a student, because I decided to go back to school when I got my divorce. So I took the first 4 years of my divorce to do some self work, because I haven't stopped, even though I've been in school and doing all sorts of coaching programs and getting my degrees during these last 10 years. I decided to mark that as the shift in taking the journey to being a student and a single mom. And so that was really powerful for me. And then as the girls have grown older, I've also taken the liberty to make a conscious rite of passage in certain times of their lives. So for example, um, when they started their menses, we would, each of us, was a one-on-one thing with each of them. We'd get dressed up and go to a nice fancy restaurant and celebrate the woman that they were becoming. And we would really talk about what this meant and what the beauty was behind it. And that was so important to me, because I remember growing up being told that, or feeling like I had some sort of disease when my menses kicked in. You can no longer, I mean, my parents, being traditional Hispanic, had their whole ideas around what that meant. And we see that in a lot of other cultures where, you're dirty or whatever the case may be. But to me, it was so important to model something different for them, because they're already going to have a negative stigma just based on what they hear from their girlfriends or, their friends at school, or the things that the stigmas that we still see about, our menstrual cycles. And so to me, it was really important to put a positive spin on them, to let them know that this is how you connect with the moon. This is how you connect with the earth. This is how you connect with all the elements. If you think about, what blood is. So it's really important. Yeah. Being horrified when you got, yeah, exactly. And so I didn't want them to have that same experience. And so to me, having a rite of passage was really important. And sometimes the rite of passage isn't this huge event, and sometimes it can be. Um, yeah, it's beautiful to do with your daughters when they start. Yeah. And letting them know there's no shame in it. It's just who we are, and to embrace our own. I know that I have had, and I really did that because I had some real struggles with my own, and this definitely helped heal that. And so a lot of the stuff that I've done has been about ancestral healing and healing myself, and then also healing the future generations of my family when they choose to have children. I think that's really important. Um, I also celebrated rites of passage when elementary was over and they were going into junior high, because those years are tough. Junior high, I would not want them to go back. I personally would never want to go back to junior high years. But I did want that to be a marked time in their life to consciously say, yeah, you're going into a higher, more awkward phase, but you got this. You have the tools that you need. Let's talk about what it means. Let's talk about how girls treat each other, and let's talk about how boys act. Because I can remember my younger daughter, stickler that she was so annoyed by the way junior high boys would act. And, having that conversation with her before we went in there was really important. My mother didn't tell me anything. I have a son yet to do rites of passage for his schooling. He's going into high school this semester. Yes, perfect time to do a rite of passage. And it can be something just like taking pause to say, here, you're about to enter. Or I know for my girls, the last school year, Emmy was a senior and Ellie was a freshman. And so I created a triangle. Let's sit in a triangle and really see how we're going to navigate this. And, just looking at the triangle and being with that was really powerful. So in those transitions, even though there are many transitions, it's important to, take pause and let's really think about what this means and celebrate what you've done, and also set the stage for what's to come. Had I known COVID was going to be here, it may have been a little different, but at the same time, we rolled with the punches. Oh wow, my mom told me she figured I would just learn it all on the street. Yeah, yeah, and who wants to learn it that way? Which leads to the sex conversation. And, those conversations can be really uncomfortable, but also acknowledging. One of the things that I've told them is, the one thing that we all have in common as human beings, every human being was created through that act, pretty much, for the most part, through reproduction. And that sex is such a common thing, not so common. It's such a tricky subject in a lot of ways, but it's the one thing we all have in common. And maybe it shouldn't be as tricky. And when I mentioned that to them, they kind of took a sigh of relief saying, wow, that's true. And why is it that way, Mom? And it's just, I've taught them about shame and how a lot of times our society and our surroundings keep us in shame or teach us shame. And then we become that product of that disrupted society that's taught us to be shameful. And so definitely teaching them those rites of passages. Another couple examples of rite of passages is when Ellie was 10, she had asked to go on a warrior goddess retreat. And that was one of the most beautiful rites of passages. We celebrated with a hot air balloon ride in Teotihuacan. And then all of the women gathered around her. She was the only little girl there. And they held space for her. And it was just such a powerful trip. And then for Emmy, when she turned 18 last summer, I was able to take her to the Sacred Valley in Peru. And that was a powerful journey for her to be at Machu Picchu on her birthday and to really connect with earth and nature and take pause to determine what it was she wanted to create for the future. I love the connectedness of sharing the rites of passage through generations. Just shared First Menses with my granddaughter and daughter. Love being invited to share the celebration with the next generation. That is so beautiful. Yeah, my mom kind of thought I was a little crazy when I was taking them out to celebrate. She, of course, saw it differently. But had my mom been there, just the power in that is just so beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing. So what else do we have? Let's see. I've got about 15 minutes here. Next thing I want to talk about is spirituality. Prior to my being a warrior goddess, well, I was raised Catholic, and I always sought more. I remember as a kid, I was mad because I had this little prayer book, and then we'd go to church on Sundays, and we'd have, the little books that they'd put out, but I wanted my own Bible. And my mom was not really a big advocate of Bible. She's not super into, Christianity or anything like that. So I was seeking. And then as I grew older, I kind of fell away in my high school years or so. And then when I got married at 19, I married a Muslim man. And so I had started seeking again at the time, and he asked me if I wanted to convert. And so I did a real deep soul search, and I realized it didn't resonate with me. So I had found a non-denominational church that I enjoyed going to. And so I started to do that, and that resonated with me. And he felt like it aligned well with Islam. And so he was like, okay, that's fine, do that. And so as time went on, I had decided that I woke up one day and realized I didn't like who I'd become. My gay friends were no longer around. I had lost a lot of friends that, meant a lot to me just because they didn't align with my religion at the time. And so about this time, Ellie was about 18 months or so, and Emmy was probably 3. And I decided to seek. And so I found this church that was kind of in transformation. They had been a fundamental Christian church, but then they were starting to research things like and do book clubs with books like Greg Braden and um, Don Miguel Ruiz, and just a lot of different theologies that took us in different directions. And we would meet on Wednesdays and Fridays and started meditating and really taking a deeper dive. And it started to shift who I was at my core. And I felt like initially I fell into what I call spiritual crisis because I felt like, oh no, what's happening? What happens when I question everything I've known or everything I've been taught for something deeper? And I was afraid, and but I knew that I couldn't not do it. It was just pulling me and pulling me and pulling me, and so I continued to follow. And it was so interesting because a whole new world of stuff opened up for me, and that's how I embarked on the Toltec path. And being Toltec is not a religion at all; it's a spiritual practice. So I know Catholics who are Toltec, also Buddhists, and I think that's the beauty of it. I love that it embraced everybody because I do honestly believe there's more than one path to God. And so I started incorporating the Toltec practice, and I was really evolving as in 13 Moons and Warrior Goddess. And I decided then that I would nurture the girls' curiosity into what there was. And so as they were growing up, we would look at the calendar to see what different holidays were coming up for different religions and stuff. And we would take time to sit and talk about what they believed and what, sometimes if I could find a recipe, I'd make a traditional dish from that culture. And we'd spend time really sitting in and soaking in the culture and talking about what that would mean, how we would feel if we were raised in that particular environment or had these particular belief systems. And I believe that it helped make them much more accepting of others and the cultural differences that we all have. And to this day, they love to, just go to different restaurants. We go to different ashrams and different places that we can visit, not during COVID, but, before COVID. And so that was a big important part of their upbringing too, was to help them see that it's all about choice and you make your choices. And at the same time, they got to experience firewalking. I am a firewalk instructor, and arrow breaking, and all of these things that really empowered them. And I feel like that was what was so important and rich from walking the warrior goddess path. And so being their mama, their advocate, and getting to share this with other warrior goddesses has been just such a gift that I've really appreciated and I honor. Yeah, and so as I'm reading in the note or in the comments, let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to be able to connect with you guys and answer any questions for you guys. Wendy, hi, thank you. Tara, are you able to see any other questions in there?
Not
No.
questions.
Thank
no.
you. You're beautiful too.
Mm-hmm.
Tara, do you have any questions for me or Serena? Thank you so much. Okay.
Yeah, actually, I do have a question. In raising two children myself and the pull, right? And I know you spoke to this, and that pull we have when we want to, kind of give them the space to explore, and yet we kind of have to push a bit, or we kind of have to direct in a direction. So, for example, like having dessert first, right? So, what I'm, really curious about, and you spoke to this a bit, but just to expand on how did you deal with your own feelings? Like, how do you around having, perhaps her resistance towards you and just kind of having to deal with yourself and how you felt about that? Because that's a big challenge for me.
Scenario based, right? Because I'm going to tell you that we've had some clear, honest conversations about, because there were times that they call me the tornado. And so we have some clear communication about. One morning they sat me down, they were like, "Mom, last night you were a tornado." And I said, "I know, I was. And I want you, let's talk about this because, it's not healthy for any of us." So we sat down and talked about it. And I told them what I was encountering in the moment. And they said, "Can you give us a warning?" And I said, "You know what? I probably can. But I need you girls to listen and take heed." And so now when I say, I'm really reaching the brink of a tornado, they spread like cockroaches. But that's become helpful for all of us to, really have that clear communication. And then there are times when I have to continuously go back to my Toltec practice and say, I'm really struggling with this. There are clearly times as a parent that you have to set a boundary and say, this is how it's going to be. And when they give pushback, because of course, being as independent as they've grown up, they've decided, they make their decisions. And so there's sometimes consequences that come with those. And so sometimes it may be you're grounded. You decided to make X decision that you knew was wrong. Because we're pretty clear about boundaries and about, the expectations. So I expect you to be home at X time. You're not home. Okay, you get your car taken away. And so that's where we talk about how important decision making is. Like, what is the consequence that's attached to this choice that you're making? Now, not to say I don't give them grace. So not that I don't give them grace, but there are times that I say, you know what, no. Because I've also, being a warrior goddess, having to learn to build boundaries was really important. And so I've set this boundary and you cross it, then there's a consequence. And I have to teach them that. Let's see, more about decision making. Any specific questions around that? How did you approach the girls how did you approach this with your girls? Just mentioned the special holidays. Yeah, so we'll talk about what Passover means, or in their dad's culture, what Ramadan is and what Eid is, and just looking around different cultures to see how they celebrate and what the celebrations mean. Also looking at the solstice and how the solstice is celebrated in different cultures. So that's really how we approach it. And I started it, they were probably still in elementary school when I would say, I noticed where they pick up on somebody's different culture and I'd say, yeah, it is different. Let's learn more about it. And piquing their curiosity to just learn and understand it. That's really how I approach that. Let's see. Will you be my mama? I would love to meet your daughters when they're in their 30s. Yeah. I pray the very best for them. How do you care for yourself in the midst of all of this? So self-care is really important. I would go on retreat. I would try so I left corporate America about 7-8 months ago. But prior to that, I was very meticulous about going on retreat at least once a quarter. And so that would mean my mom would come and stay. My mom's retired. And so she would come and stay with them for that week, or a friend would stay with them. And I would go and be on retreat. And that was super, super helpful. It helped me stay grounded and centered. I'm pretty loyal to my daily practice, meditation, journaling, whatever that may be. Exercise, I try to as much as possible, and that's an area that I'm still working on. So also knowing that I'm not in judgment over that. I set those intentions and continuously follow them and try to show myself self-compassion. Recently, I know some of the leadership team knows that I lost an uncle due to COVID complications. And so giving myself the space to grieve and, even throughout this whole COVID thing, I would feel grief bubble up, and I would just take a time out and cry. And there was a time that I remember that Emmy said, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "I understand that this may be uncomfortable for you, but I'm going to ask you to give me my space and allow me to cry, because this is how I'm going to heal." And in that process, I think they've both acknowledged that sometimes they're going to cry too, and to make space for yourself to allow those feelings to bubble up and, do what needs to be done. And then also to value your work. Through Heather Ashamara, I've learned the Warrior Heart practice, and that's a practice that I definitely incorporate quite a bit too. Thank you all. There's a link. Will this be? Tara couldn't find this one. Someone posted there is a link. Will this be in the address? Need to make, I think, I'm not sure, Nina, what that means. I'm thinking it means, are we going to record these? And we are, and there's going to be a playlist that's going to be sent out. I think that's something I need to make with my kids, more boundaries. Yeah. I had a time that I was not good at that, but it's gotten a lot better. What a gift to have been able to raise broken children. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you all being here. We are going to be taking 15-minute breaks in between our sessions. So you are in for such treats. These warrior goddesses are amazing, amazing, amazing women that have so many gifts and talents to share. And they're so much fun. Oh my goodness. We imagine being in a room with all of us giggling like that. All of us. It's so much fun. And I look forward to you all joining us this weekend. Tara?
Thank you so much, Adelee. I mean, wonderful. So delightful to hear from you. And thank you for bringing your vulnerability and for bringing, truth and your experiences with your daughters. It's wonderful, and such great lessons for ourselves too. Like, even not in parenting, but just, how do we look at having dessert first ourselves? So there's so many nuggets of beautiful, like, wisdom that you shared. So thank you so much.
You're so very welcome. Love to all of you, and
Toltec kisses. Mwah.
Love you all.
Thank you so much, Adelee. And before I just end, I'm just going to answer a few quick questions that folks have brought up. We are working on making it easier to find the videos and getting them posted to the units in the Warrior Goddess Women group. So know that is definitely something we are working on, so that you'll be able to see all of the videos. And if you weren't able to find Adelee's video at the beginning and you missed a piece of it, please know that it's already been shared into the units in the group. So if you go into units, you can find the whole thing there, and that recording will be there so that you can go back and listen to all of Adelee's fantastic session. So that's there for you. All right. And we're going to take about a 15-minute break now. At the top of the hour, we will be back. So a little potty break or whatever it is you need to do, go run outside or do whatever. And again, Adelee, thank you so much. Love you so much. You're fantastic.
Love you too. Thank you.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.